Lila Vio. It's strange how silence can feel louder than a scream. Right now, sitting in my glass-walled office on the 32nd floor, I can hear it, the kind of silence that hums right before life decides to test you again. The city glitters below me. Tiny cars, blinking lights, people chasing something they'll never name. My reflection in the window looks composed. A woman in a cream silk blouse, hair pulled neatly back, diamond studs glinting under soft light. No one looking at me would ever imagine how loud one sentence still echoes in my mind. You're the most useless child we have. My father's voice, sharp, dismissive, final. I take a deep breath, force a small smile, and reach for my coffee. The surface trembles slightly in my hand. Even now, years later, that voice can shake me more than any corporate storm ever could. The phone on my desk vibrates. A message flashes on the screen. Dad's in town. Family dinner tonight. Please come. Mom. For a moment, I just stare. My pulse quickens. My nails tap softly on the desk. A nervous rhythm. I thought I'd unlearn it. Family dinner. After 7 years. After everything. I set the cup down, straighten my shoulders, and whisper under my breath. Then let's see how useless I still am. Soft instrumental swell, transition tone. Lila Vio. I was 19 the last time I stood in that living room. Same beige walls, same ticking clock, same faces that always looked everywhere but at me. It started over something small. It always did. That day, it was about college, me wanting to switch majors from business to design. Dad snapping design? You think sketching dresses is a career? You'll end up broke, living off us forever. Mom said nothing. My brothers exchanged a glance, the kind that always said, here she goes again. Lila, it's what I'm good at, Dad. It's what makes me happy. He laughed, loud, sharp, cruel. Then, in front of everyone, he shouted the words that burned themselves into my bones. You're the most useless child we have. The room fell silent. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. I remember my throat tightening, the way my palms turned cold. My heart beat so fast it hurt. I wanted to speak, anything, but the words stuck like glass in my throat. Everyone stared. No one defended me. That was the moment I realized I could either shrink into their silence or walk out and find my own voice. I went to my room, shoved my sketchbook into a worn backpack, and reached for something I hadn't touched in years, a small silver bracelet with a tiny engraved quote from my grandmother. Bloom, even in the dark. She gave it to me when I was 12 before she passed. Said it was for the day I'd need courage more than comfort. That night I left home. No dramatic goodbye, no tears. Just the sound of my sneakers on the gravel driveway and my heart pounding like a drum that finally found its own rhythm. Soft piano fades in, voice steady but emotional. Lila Vio. I didn't know where I was going. Just that I'd rather be lost chasing something I loved than stay found in a house that never saw me. Pause, soft exhale. And that was the last night I ever called that place home. Lila Vio. The first night away from home, I slept on a bus station bench with my backpack for a pillow. It wasn't bravery. It was survival. Every hour, I told myself I could still go back. That maybe Dad would call. He didn't. 2 days later, I found a tiny apartment above a laundromat, cracked tiles, a flickering light, and a rent I could barely afford. I worked morning shifts at a diner and evening shifts folding clothes at a boutique. Between them, I sketched designs in the margins of old receipts. Sometimes I'd cry quietly in that apartment, not from regret, but exhaustion. I kept hearing his words. Useless. They followed me everywhere. So I decided to make them fuel. I saved every dollar, enrolled in night classes for fashion design, and learned how to sew on a borrowed machine that groaned louder than my self-doubt. One night, during class, my instructor, Mrs. Rivera, stopped by my table. She looked at my sketch and said, "This has something." That moment changed everything. She became my first mentor. Not because she handed me success, but because she taught me how to see it in myself. When I told her I couldn't afford proper materials, she smiled and handed me a box of fabric scraps. Start with what you have, Lila, she said. Talent doesn't wait for perfect.
So I did.
I started sewing small pieces, tote bags, scarves, little designs that no one else wanted to make. I sold them online, then at weekend markets. Some weeks I made $20, some $200. But slowly the orders began to grow. I learned to brand, to photograph, to sell. I taught myself business from YouTube tutorials and free online courses. Every late night became a step toward freedom. Soft montage tone, sound of typing, sewing machine, city noises blending. 3 years later, I launched Hayes Atelier, my own small clothing label. It wasn't glamorous at first, just a name printed on brown paper tags. But it was mine. I worked 14-hour days, slept 4, and still woke up hungry to prove something, not to my father anymore, but to that scared girl who walked away in the dark. By 27, my designs were featured in a local magazine. By 28, I had investors. And by 30, my pieces walked their first runway in New York. Soft chuckle, emotional pause. My parents still thought I worked somewhere in retail. I let them believe that. It was easier than explaining that the girl they'd called useless now owned a brand worn by women they watched on TV. Lila Vio. I didn't need them to know, not yet. Because someday I knew they'd see. And when they did, I wanted them to see everything. Soft swell of hopeful music. Fade out. Lila Vio. 7 years later, I learned success doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes, it feels like silence, the calm you've earned after 1,000 storms. That Friday, I had just finished a design meeting when my assistant, Clara, peeked in. "Ms. Hayes, there's a family here asking for you." I froze. Family. The word alone made my chest tighten. I walked out into the reception area, and there they were. Mom, holding her purse too tightly. My brothers shifting uncomfortably. And Dad, standing tall, but older, grayer, eyes darting across the studio walls lined with sketches and framed magazine covers. Lila Vio. For a moment, I just watched them take it in. The polished mannequins, the racks of my latest collection, the bold black letters on the glass door that read Hayes Atelier. Dad frowning. "So, this is where you work?" Lila, smiling faintly, "Not exactly. This is what I built." He looked confused. "You mean you own this?" I nodded. And in that instant I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. The disbelief. The reluctant awe. Mom's eyes glistened. "Lila, it's beautiful." I gestured toward the office, offering them coffee. Old habits of politeness still intact. Inside, the walls were filled with photos, fashion shows, charity events, women wearing my designs. A framed article read, "Lila Hayes, the visionary behind Hayes Atelier." Dad's voice softened, though pride still wrestled with ego. "You did all this alone?" Lila Vio. I took a breath, felt the silk of my blouse brush against my wrist, the weight of my grandmother's bracelet catching the light. Every inch of that moment belonged to me. Lila, steady, calm.
Yes.
Alone. But not empty. The room fell quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't the trembling girl in his living room. I was a woman standing on her own ground, unshaken. Dad exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't know you had it in you." I met his gaze. "That's because you never looked close enough." Soft piano chord, emotional beat. Mom placed a trembling hand on mine. "Your father didn't mean those words, sweetheart, he was angry." Lila Vio. I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but because it took me years to stop searching for that apology. And now that it was here, I didn't need it. Lila, maybe he didn't mean them, but I did mean what I said when I left. Dad's jaw tensed. "And what was that?" I stood up slowly, walked toward the window overlooking the city, the same city I once faced as a frightened teenager. Then I turned back, my voice calm but firm. "Lila," I said, "stop. Stop calling me useless. Stop trying to decide who I can be." And I meant it. A beat of silence, wind against the window panes. He didn't reply. He just looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. And I think, somewhere behind his pride, He saw the reflection of everything he tried to break, still standing, still shining. Lila Vio. That day, something shifted. Not just between us, inside me. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. Soft instrumental swells, graceful, emotional tone. Lila. Dad. I built this not to show you I could, but to remind myself I always could. Music fades gently as scene closes on Lila's composed smile. Lila Vio. Power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who no longer needs to. After the silence settled, my father sat across from me at the long oak table in my office. My mother's eyes flicked between us like she was waiting for the old storm to start again. But it didn't. This time, I held the calm. Dad. We didn't come here for a fight. Your mother wanted to see you. And maybe I did too. His voice cracked a little on that last part. A strange thing happens when the person who once terrified you starts sounding human again. You stop hating them. You start seeing their fear. Lila, I know you didn't come for a fight, Dad. But I can't go back to how things were. He nodded, almost relieved that I said it first. I leaned back in my chair, my bracelet glinting under the soft light, that same silver one from my grandmother. The reminder of every dark night I survived. Lila Vio. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace, but peace with boundaries. Lila, if we're going to be a family again, there have to be conditions. Mom blinked, confused. Conditions? I nodded slowly.
Yes.
Not punishments. Conditions for respect. Soft pause. Heartbeat sound. Almost imperceptible. Lila. First, no more shouting. Not at me. Not at anyone. Second, I don't want pity for leaving. I want understanding. And third, if you want me in your life, you need to start seeing me as I am, not as the daughter you wish I'd been. Dad's hands tightened together. His lips parted like he wanted to argue. Then, he just sighed. It wasn't defeat. It was something softer. Maybe regret. Dad, quietly, you've changed, Lila. Lila. No. I've grown. You just never gave me space to. Soft exhale, emotional piano builds. Mom reached for my hand again. We'll try, sweetheart. We just didn't know how much we hurt you. I gave her a faint smile. You don't have to understand everything. You just have to stop pretending nothing happened. Lila Vio. That was the moment I realized forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let their words define the rest of your story. Dad stood, walked toward the framed photo of my first fashion show. His voice dropped low. Dad, I'm proud of you. It was simple, uneven, almost reluctant, but it was real. And that was enough. Lila Vio. Sometimes, you don't need an apology wrapped in poetry. Sometimes, a quiet truth is louder than years of noise. I smiled, walked over, and extended my hand. Then we start fresh. But this time, on equal ground. He nodded, eyes glistening, jaw trembling. Soft music fades into hopeful notes. Lila Vio. For the first time in my life, my father didn't see me as a child to correct. He saw me as a woman who had taught herself to rise. Fade out, sound of light rain tapping the windows again, but this time peaceful, rhythmic. Lila Vio. It's been 3 months since that day. Since my father sat in my office, staring at the woman he never thought I'd become. Since I stopped needing his approval to feel whole. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. Healing never does. But the air feels lighter now, in my studio, in my heart, even in the way I breathe.
Mom visits sometimes.
She brings homemade pie and fusses over the plants I keep forgetting to water. My brothers text more often too, small messages, simple check-ins. And Dad. He doesn't say much, but when he does, his words come softer now. Careful. Measured.
Human.
Last week, he came by during a team meeting. He stood near the entrance, watching quietly as models rehearsed for the new line. When our eyes met, he just nodded once. No grand speech, no apology, just that nod. And somehow it was enough. Soft smile in her tone. Lila Vio. People think strength is about never breaking. But real strength is breaking and building yourself back with your own hands, even when no one's watching. Every morning now, before the world wakes up, I sit by my window with coffee and the bracelet my grandmother gave me. It's worn and scratched from years of use, but the engraving is still clear. Bloom, even in the dark. I run my thumb across those words every day. They remind me that the dark wasn't my enemy. It was my soil. Soft pause. Piano deepened slightly. Lila Vo. I used to think my father's words were my curse, that useless was tattooed somewhere deep inside me. But I was wrong. Those words didn't define me.
They shaped me.
They built the fire that forged everything I've become. Now, when I look at the girl I used to be, scared, trembling, standing in that living room, I wish I could tell her one thing. You're not useless. You're becoming unstoppable. Soft music swells, voice steady, proud, reflective. Lila, final voiceover line. So when he called me useless, maybe he was right for a moment. Because sometimes you have to be broken before you can build yourself into something no one ever saw coming. And now, when they call my name, they call it with respect. Music fades into silence, lingering warmth in her tone. Lila, softly, last whisper. Then stop, Dad. Because I'm finally enough.